Town of Abington Planning Commission to order. Welcome to the Town of Abington, Virginia Planning Commission regular meeting. We appreciate your interest and we encourage public participation in our meeting. Your comments are important to our decision-making process. Please note that there will be opportunities during the meeting for you to address the commission members. The first opportunity will come if there's a public hearing on the agenda, when the vice chairman, in this case, declares the hearing open for comment. The second opportunity to address the commission will come near the end of the agenda, when the vice chairman will inquire if anyone wishes to address the members of the commission. Anyone addressing the commission will approach the podium, give your first and last name and your complete physical address, and comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Austin,
Present.
Mr. Johnson,
Present.
Mr. Weaver,
Present.
Mr. Pennington,
Present.
Mr. Sproles,
Present.
Mr. Wilson,
Present.
and Mr. Schuman is absent.
All right, thank you. We're going to move to the approval of the minutes of our regular meeting from March 25th, 2024. Has everyone had a chance to look at those? Any comments or changes? If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
I make a motion we approve the minutes as submitted.
All right.
Second.
Second, any discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I would abstain as not being present at that meeting, please.
All right, thank
I would
you.
abstain also as not being present.
All right. Next, public comments for items not on the agenda. Is anyone signed up to speak? Items not on the agenda, okay. We'll move on. Certificate of appropriateness. First Community Bank and Gerhardt Enterprises LLC have requested approval of a certificate of appropriateness to add a wall sign on the primary or south elevation of the building located at 271 West Main Street. That's parcel 011-1-84. The property is within the Central Business District, Zone B3, the entrance corridor, and can be seen from a public right-of-way, therefore requiring the approval of the Planning Commission prior to completion. Do we have a staff report on this?
Caleb Conklin, Planner 1 with the town. Owner, First Community Bank, and applicant Gearhart Enterprises have requested approval of a certificate of appropriateness to add a wall sign on the primary or south elevation of the building located at 271 West Main Street. A little background, 271 West Main Street is occupied by First Community Bank. There is an existing wall sign and freestanding sign at the property. The applicant proposes to add a wall sign to the primary south elevation of the building. The non-illuminated sign will be made of aluminum with vinyl graphics. The sign will measure 2.5 feet by 2.5 feet for a total of 6.25 square feet in area and be 1 inch in depth. The sign's color will have a background of white with black lettering and a red company logo. There is an existing wall sign on the primary south elevation of the building above the main entryway. The Town of Abington zoning ordinance allows for 1 wall sign per business per street frontage within the B3 district. So this sign being proposed is going to be considered a minor sign because there is no limit for a minor sign, but however, this sign that's proposed is a little too large, so the sign will need to be smaller to that 3 square feet maximum. Is there any questions for me?
So we're recommending it to be smaller than what has been proposed?
Yes, because there's already 1 wall sign, there cannot be another wall sign, so we are going to consider this a minor wall sign, or a minor sign. And to be a minor sign, it's a maximum of 3 square feet. So
And
if
that's
you can,
agreeable to the applicant?
yes, so if you can request that to be, to get that down to 3 square feet.
You'll have to ask them if they're agreeable to that when they
Okay,
come up.
okay,
That's
all right.
correct.
Is there anyone from the applicant or owner that would like to speak to this? Hello.
My name is Marty Gearhart. I am the managing member of Gearhart Enterprises at 131 Henderson Drive, Bluefield, West Virginia. My company is a sign contractor on behalf of First Community Bank. The minor wall sign detail here that was just discussed, this is my first knowledge of that, so I'll apologize for being a little bit thinking on my feet. I'm also going to apologize to Tad. I was not going to be making comments today. The gentleman from the bank here locally was, and he had to have a little hip surgery. So when I emailed this morning, he wasn't available, and so here I am. The sign that we are suggesting is much like the sign that First Community Bank had. If you all recall, at one point in time, they were located across the street. That sign, in fact, was the same size, was removed. It is currently placed in Boone, North Carolina, when they moved across the street here. Purpose of this sign, as you all may know, First Community Bank does offer brokerage services, wealth management within their offices, and they centralize that within a few offices. Their office in Bluefield, their office in here, and a couple other locations. When they do that, they're required to have some specifics on the sign in order to satisfy the broker-dealer and their requirements. Thus, this layout has sort of been around in circles a couple times to be sure that we had it within everybody's compliance circumstances. The size there sort of fits the space. It's not a very big sign, to be honest with you. While it does come up at 12 square feet, I would, if you can look at it from here, if you have eyes no better than I do, I can't hardly read it from here. In fact, I can't read it from here, other than knowing what it says. I don't know that reducing this sign back to what a foot and a half tall by a foot and a half is, I don't think it'd be able to be read at all. And I don't know that it would have any value for anyone. But I do think it's important for them to be able to identify these services that they offer at this bank, that not every bank does offer, that they are part of the bank, but are separate than a traditional banking function. With that said, I don't know how that fits within ordinances as described. Again, this is the first I've come into knowledge of this minor sign circumstance. My original inclination was we had one sign and that's what was allowed, and we were applying for a second of this size. Certainly happy to answer any questions. I do know that one of the requirements were for me to bring some material samples, which I have done. There's not a whole lot to this sign, to be honest with you. It is fabricated aluminum. It's just in an inch depth. On the inside of it has aluminum angle iron. It mounts by aluminum angle iron on the building clips. Fasteners go from one set of angle into the top of the sign and the bottom of the sign into those clips to hold it into place. But it is aluminum and it is vinyl, and there's no other material to it. Again, I have the samples. I have a scrap piece of vinyl and a scrap piece of aluminum here if you all would like to take a look at it. Glad to answer any questions.
Is there any way that you would want to take off the top part that says First Community and leave all the rest of the signage the same? That's
Unfortunately,
one.
that's part of the compliance
Gotcha.
that we have
Okay.
to. I can't do one without the other, if that makes sense to you. In other words, and it sort of seems counterintuitive, the fact that we need the identification for the wealth management, but unfortunately, when you get into corporate guidelines and you do have two different corporate circumstances and the federal government involved here, this is sort of the way it has to be.
What is on the other, we have another wall sign?
You see it here.
This right here just says First Community Bank.
That's what we're considering the other wall sign, okay.
Yes. That is, and those are aluminum, also non-illuminated. They're 1/4-inch cut plate letters.
And one of the things that I was hoping is that if we didn't have a wall sign on the Plum Alley sign, then maybe we could reallocate that to the front and say there's only two on the two street frontages. However, there's this same sign on the back of it, so.
and staff may have to help me along if you all can't, but again, I wasn't recognizing that this was different than a typical wall sign and a certificate of appropriateness as opposed to a variance from the building code. I don't
Correct,
know what the
yeah.
technicalities are there for your particular locality, but I guess our original consideration was for this to be an additional sign. Unfortunately, I filed this application in January. I mailed it down, for whatever reason, nobody here got it, but it was received. I have the UPS receipt. So I'm sort of a little later.
That's weird.
It's a big building. There's lots of people here. Who knows what didn't get delivered, all that.
Yeah.
With all that being, it doesn't matter. But I leave town for a couple of months on some other duty in January and February. So I filed it before I left in hopes
Yeah.
of returning and being able to come down and see you guys.
Definitely apologize
You all
for
were
that.
very, very accommodating, by the way, when I did come back and said, oh, what's going on?
Okay.
And seeing that we got to the agenda as quickly as possible, and I do appreciate that. It's, because that's not always easy, I know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So whatever happened, I apologize for being as
Sure.
late as I am. It wasn't intended to be this late. And I think probably my, on occasion, not being as modern as I should and having sent it through the US or through UPS probably was not as well taken as it would have been had I sent it electronically.
Is there a way to move the First Community down close to the wealth management and then basically shrink the outer boundary? Because the way that we have to analyze signs is to look at the outer edge of all of the words put together. And it seems to me that you might be able to actually push it all together and actually make it fit in that 3 square feet.
From a technical standpoint, yes, and it probably would not really affect how it's put together. It would affect Raymond James' approval, and I don't know what it would do at First Community Bank. They might be willing to, I think the bank would probably give me a pass, Raymond James, probably not. Again, we did lay this out 2 or 3 different ways in order to meet their compliance requirements before we came to you all.
So-
Mark,
Yes, sir.
and from a size standpoint, I think it was 6 that is what we're shooting for, or what we are, we're shooting for 3. 6 and 3, that's half. You can't read that thing. You cut that whole sign, if you square it, if you bring it down by half, we could bring it in some years. From it's 2 foot, what, 2'6" now, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
We can bring it
even
in.
on the sides, it could come in an inch or so, you know, I
Couple
could.
inches here and there, but you're trying to cut from, at this point, this is, again, the first we've heard this discussion of this. I don't know if you can cut it in half and still be relevant.
Do we know the square footage on the top sign? And then
Yeah.
whether or
You know,
not that could
do
be-
we? Yes. Do I have it with me? No.
So
Okay.
we do have, so the building's 67 feet long, so it allows 134 square feet of signage.
Yeah, we're nowhere near that.
They're nowhere near that. The current sign's
Um,
approximately 12 square feet, and they're asking for 6.25 square feet. So, I mean, if you wanted to try to consider this all one sign,
Well,
is that what you're thinking?
Reconfigure the top.
Right?
Is,
I can tell you that the C in First Community is 8 inches. I could probably work out relatively close to square footage with a little bit of time and amateur.
That's what she's saying.
I said about
We're
12.
within, well within the
You're well within
134
that.
square feet. There's no
Correct.
question about that, however. There's no, my guess is that top sign is probably 28 to 30 square feet.
Could the top sign be reconfigured to where you got First Community Bank and then just have a line underneath and then have Raymond James Wealth Management, something of that nature, to where you got one sign versus 2?
Could we? Yes. Again, I'm getting a little out of school here as to what the bank allows, because there's a difference between identifying that division that's wealth management and identifying the bank itself. When I do that, it does require some additional building construction because those letters are mounted with studs. And so every letter that I take off of there will leave about 6 holes in the building. And trying to patch that, drive it and recode it to match. is not gonna be pleasant, probably for you or the bank. But technically, within what you're saying, yes, it could be done.
So is that, on the right of that picture, is that a sign
This
as
right
well?
here,
Yeah.
yes, it is.
That is their freestanding sign, that is correct.
So does
And
that
that one's 24 square feet, that one I can
count
tell
in
you.
the totals and all? or-
No, you actually get a freestanding, so you get one freestanding per street frontage, 60
So-
square feet, so this is another sign.
So they can't put it on there or put this on a blade thing off the building somewhere?
They
They're
could,
already-
yes, yeah, I know, we got a lot of signs available, just not multiples of the same thing. So
Yeah.
you can actually have one projecting sign. So what, Mr. Wilson is suggesting is, could you actually hang it off of this main sign?
You know, it is possible, and I don't have the details on the pole cover that's there. That sign, the 24 square foot sign that's up top, there is a black pole cover that protrudes down that covers up the supporting column. And it is possible to attach that sign to that pole cover. I don't know how, but I don't know whether we have that much square footage for freestanding sign. You'd have to let me know that.
You would get the 12 square feet for a projecting sign there, so you should be fine since you're only asking for
Well, I
6.5.
mean, we wouldn't want to be projecting, as you showed that when it's turned at a bias. We're talking about probably under the street note.
Can we mount it on the black part there?
This
Yeah.
Correct.
area right here.
That's what
I
I
would
was
think
thinking.
that if they wanted to do that, they'd want to put it on both sides of that sign.
That is fine.
But yeah, that certainly is possible.
Because you have 60 square feet for the freestanding, so even if you added these to that, I can't imagine that that's over 60. That looks about 2.5 by 10, about 20 square feet.
Again, I think that's, yeah, I was gonna say that's 4 by, I thought it was 4 by 6, could be 4 by 8.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, that looks like plenty of room on that upright.
that's certainly possible. That's a good suggestion, and I think that might be a legitimate compromise. And, by the way, he didn't introduce himself. This is Chris Canterbury. He is with First Community Bank in Bluefield, and he's shaking his head saying he thinks that might be viable.
That way you could get it approved and not have to go through a variance process, because I just think a variance for this, it's probably just not worth it, so, yeah.
I understand. It's a small sign.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
would be remiss for me to tell you that most of what I do is not considerably larger than this, but that doesn't mean it's not important, and it's important to the bank, and it's important to the town to get it right, so we're here.
Being on both sides of that sign like that, I think that would be more visible to the public than on the side of the
It would
building.
be more visible, but more obtrusive, I guess, to the town apples. I mean, we have a similar sign at our Bluefield location. It's posted on the post, so that, I'm sure we can get that approved. It's more of a Raymond James logo at that point than it is.
Well, and Chris, what I'm suggesting is the same sign.
Well, that's what I just have, whether Raymond James will let us do that or not, I don't know.
It's required for it to be established as two separate entities.
Yeah.
It's
No,
not the bank and it's not, you know, they
We have
can't.
to keep them separate.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's our
So
requirement.
that's up to them, I guess, but if we had that separation, I don't know.
We just did that. Bluefield. You
So-
did one part that way, so we just have to.
We have to run it through their compliance, but
Don't the,
it's very possible.
Like right over here, these older buildings with the businesses, don't they have like, kind of like a nice real estate looking signs that say what they are? Like, is that possible to do in the shrubberies there? You know what I'm saying? It's like a blade
But
sign.
that gives you a
but it's
second
hanging off
freestanding
a-
sign, and
Yeah,
that
that would be
probably
a second.
violates
Can't do
code
it, you
again.
can't do
Yeah.
that, okay.
If what you all are suggesting is acceptable, then I will prepare drawings for Raymond James' review and approval, and if they're accepting of it, then I will file an application if you all deem
Would
that
you-
appropriate.
Would you like them to make a motion tonight, so you wouldn't have to come back again?
That would be nice, if you can, if that's the will of the board. But I think we can do that within the same size placed on the,
It might be a good way to get the signs up and
yeah, I
advertising.
think you're
And then
right.
if you want to pursue the other route, then you have time to do it, but you're still in business.
If my father was here, he would tell you I'm very hard-headed, but I'd like to think that I'm thinking, and it seems to me like a legitimate way to present what we're attempting to do.
No, I agree.
On that Google Maps, and I don't know how up to date it is, you wanna look at the Bluefield, West Virginia branch, and I noticed you just did that, you may do the same there, it might be updated, you might see what it looks like, you guys can see it. He just put those up last year, I don't know how updated it is, if it is, we recently had to change that sign out.
Federal at Raleigh. It's the
Bluefield,
address.
West Virginia.
That's on the front side of the building.
Am I up here?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that one.
That's the one.
Right there in front, right there by the poster should be, if it's updated.
If you put it right there and spin it toward the building, spin it the other way.
Okay. All the way around.
Man, you can't see it for the tree.
It does one.
It does. Not on that side, though. It's a one-way street.
Okay. Let's see.
That tree.
Well, and
I think that.
you can see that we have some IDs, I guess, but,
Mhm.
this is a little different. That's a blade as opposed to that pole cover's a little wider, and this is a little narrower, so we would use more of the configuration of the sign that you see here.
Yeah.
That's the old sign.
Yeah, that is the old sign, that's there.
Yeah.
That's what's in, that's there before. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone?
Does that seem acceptable to you?
Yes, I'm perfectly willing to do that. The bank seems to agree. They've got to deal with their internal
Yeah,
stuff.
we'll have to go to Raymond James.
So, but once I have their approval, I can make an application based upon your all's, hopefully pending approval.
As far as the square footage on a freestanding, I mean, is there,
They've got 60 square feet, so
We're well
they should be
within, yeah.
just fine.
okay. I make a motion that sign be permitted on the freestanding sign not to exceed current regulations. And that would be on both sides, with the application, the revised application being submitted to staff for approval.
All right, we have a motion.
I'll second.
All right, second. Any discussion? All right, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Austin,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Weaver,
Aye.
Mr. Pennington,
Aye.
Mr. Sproles.
Aye.
And Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you for your
You're welcome.
consideration, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, let's see. I guess we move to old business, and the first item, code discussion concerning signage and lighting sections.
Okay, so these items that we have tonight are just basic discussion points for you all, based on things we've talked about in the last few meetings that we wanted to bring you. The first is the fact that in January, we dealt with the Fiddler's sign. And at that time, we kind of said, you know, it's a chance to bring it down. However, the ordinance would have taken it from, 50 down to 15 feet, so it would have been quite a dramatic change. And so you all asked the question, well, how many signs do we, really have that are within that 660 feet? And then you also asked, where does that 660 feet come from? And we were just kind of like, not entirely sure. So Caleb and Gabe did a lot of research and in fact looked at a number of other codes throughout the state of Virginia. And who knows if it was one consulting firm back in the 70s, but many of them have this 660-foot buffer. So not really a scientific reason for why that exists. However, we do have a lot of signs in that. We also have quite a few signs that are out of it. So basically, if you were to look at the images in your book or on the screen here, the signs that are in green are signs that are within the 660 feet from the interchange. The signs in yellow are ones that are right on the edge, and then the signs in red are all ones that are still higher, 50 feet or higher, but they are actually outside of the 660 feet. So, it's really kind of open for you all to decide if you want to direct staff to do anything in particular with that knowledge. So here's an example at exit 14. Caleb and Gabe also drove each of these exits, and I'll play this video here, but you can kind of see, like, if you're driving, Fiddlers kept saying, well, you won't be able to even, without this sign, nobody will be able to know that we're here. However, if you're even driving on the interstate, and you look over, this is exit 14. But you can kind of see that you really can't see many of the signs in general. Let's see, we'll go down to exit 17, eastbound. You really just, even as you're passing the exit, you can kind of see the McDonald's and the Exxon, but it's really difficult to identify that there's a whole lot there. If you come from the other direction, you can kind of see the Fiddler sign way up here. But I'm not sure that that's really going to necessarily entice you to pull your car over quickly and go eat at that restaurant. So we just did a little analysis, at each of each of these exits. Here's exit 19. Direction. So, honestly, these buffers, it's a bit arbitrary. I do think that we don't want them to probably get any larger. I mean, I don't think we would want to say 800 feet to have 50-foot high signs, because I'm not sure that you would really be gaining anything to make this 660 feet larger. But
Realistically, the only use, for anybody driving on interstate, personally speaking, I'm gonna be looking for signs prior to the exit as to what restaurants are there, what services are there, and then, I may make the exit based upon that information. And then once you pull down to a stop sign or what have you, that's when you start looking for these signs. I don't think, and you all correct me if I'm wrong, but none of the decisions as to whether or not you stop or pull off of interstate are going to be predicated upon signs that you see immediately by that time you already buy it.
correct.
It seems kind of outdated almost with all the GPS and
It truly
that
does.
sort of thing. And all the exits tell you
Speed limit
what's
was
there.
probably 55 miles per hour when that was,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
had time to change your mind. But at 70 miles, you don't.
But, and again, all of the signs preceding the exit tell you what's there, and then as you're pulling down the exit, they'll say McDonald's, left 3/10 of a mile, Hardee's right, half a mile, whatever.
So if you all are fine with it, we'll just leave it as is, because I just don't see really a reason to expand it. Unless you all thought so. I think that was just sort of the general question during that meeting was where did this 660 even
Yeah.
come from?
Yeah.
So we laid it all out and looked at all of them at each of the exits. I think some of our signage actually in town might be higher than the underlying 15 feet. That's a definite thing that we might want to look at some point. But we also now have this comprehensive sign plan ability for people. So if they do really want to make a more flexible, larger sign with multi-tenants, they have that ability to come in and ask you all for that. So at this point, staff would just probably recommend nothing be done on the 660.
I guess my only comment would be the same as when we consider the fiddler sign, you know. If it's what our ordinance is, are we saying that we don't really, I don't want to put it that way, we're not going to enforce it. We didn't with fiddlers, we had the opportunity to bring them into compliance, and we made a statement there, we're going to let you have a taller sign, even though you're out of the 660.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what adjustment do we need to make? Do we need to say, we're just going to repeal that portion of our sign ordinance?
We could, however, we could basically, because we have about 4 of these signs that are larger at the exit 17, one specifically, and basically those are all non-conforming signs.
Right.
And so either as each one of them comes in, we could bring them down, or, you know, they've established their nonconformity at their height and size and shape and all of that. And so you would basically be in another fiddler's situation with each one of them.
Right.
So we could either expand it to encompass them, make them conforming rather than non-conforming, or they would remain non-conforming, and you kind of basically go through that same effort every time.
Well, I think the flavor of the planning commission and the town in general is, you know, we want to be business friendly, and we don't want to discourage people from being able to advertise their business. And I think that's where we run afoul of what our ordinance is oftentimes.
So an option would be to look at a larger area, and that larger area then at each of the exits would be to encompass signs that currently are outside of the 660 feet. So for example, exit 14, right now the one sign you have is the Ford sign. At exit 17, you have quite a few actually. So you have Taco Bell, Fiddler's, Arby's, Kroger, and Aaron's. And then at 19, you have Red Roof Inn, Exxon, kind of right on the edge, but then you have the Burger King and the BP. So you could create a, one of the things you could do is you could just really create an overlay district that each one of those becomes, you know, an area where you allow these larger signs. And that would be a creative way in which to allow them, but it wouldn't necessarily just say 800 feet or 1,000 feet across the board. You could just say, this is our interstate signage overlay district, and we could create that for each of the exits.
I don't see the old Food City sign.
The old Food City sign here at exit 17.
Without the.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that's not identified. It is very tall.
That's, no, on the upper
It's
side of
one
Taco
of those
Bell
two.
is what I'm talking
Yeah, right
about.
there past Taco Bell. I'll pull it
The
up.
upper side,
Oh, I see yeah, from the old
yeah, because
shopping center, yeah.
that's gonna be, the shopping center is being repurposed, so seemingly we're gonna
Come into that, yeah.
correct
Correct.
sooner rather than later.
Yeah, that one,
Yes, ma'am.
that's a little bit shorter. Looks like.
It's definitely taller than 15 feet though, so it is one of the ones. So yeah, I mean, the easiest way probably to accomplish this would be to create a signage overlay district that goes and captures all of these businesses that already exist. Or you could do a larger distance, so you could say 1,000 feet from the, or, you know, we could figure that out. Today is just to discuss which direction you all are interested in.
I don't think if we went another 650 feet, that would get us to Fiddlers, but it wouldn't pick up the others.
Mhm.
I don't want to be, I understand being business friendly, but too business friendly, you end up with like a Sevierville situation that nobody wants.
Mhm.
So, I mean, we can't just have them popping up everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're almost talking about a grandfather situation.
That's what I was thinking.
If it's there now, you know, but whenever the ownership changes, something of this nature, I don't know what the mechanism would be that would trigger a review to where you would have to come back into compliance, but I certainly wouldn't want it expanded.
Okay. So yeah, and that's really what happened to you all with the Fiddlers, you know, it changed hands, it changed the shape and size, so that's where it came to you, and then we reviewed it as a non-conforming sign, and ultimately you all decided to go ahead and leave it at that height. So they do have that protection currently, so when they come in and, you know, we send them in front of you, they have that ability to say, hey, I'm a non-conforming sign, it existed previously, and you all work through it just like you did. Or you could legitimize the whole entire area more if you chose to. It's really, there's really a couple of different options there.
Can it be grandfathered in such a way that it's the existing structures only? You can't put another, you know, if another new building was erected, you can't put a sign the same height as these folks are. It's
Yeah.
kind of grandfathered like the billboards are.
Yep.
What's there is there till it falls down.
Yes, so as long as you don't expand the area, then yes, that's pretty much how they all are. They're grandfathered in. So even, let's just say the Fiddlers, for example, if it now went to if we have a picture of the Fiddlers in here. If this changed and it became anything else, let's just call it, you know, a Smith's restaurant, they now, as long as they were inside that square footage of that sign, they could even change the name and everything as long as it stayed the coloring. Like, we've basically allowed it to continue forward. So they could then come in and basically say to you all, you know, it's grandfathered, but it changed. So now it has been legitimized because it just happened. So you all would now have that square footage and that height if someone came in and wanted to change that. So these are, I mean, the word grandfathering is really similar to the word, I mean, the word non-conforming is really how we talk about them in the zoning ordinance. They are essentially grandfathered to the point of like fully changing. So, you know, this is one that we actually have contacted them and asked them, is there a chance that you guys would ever want to come in and make this sign with the errands, just this whole sign, into a much more attractive sign? And they said that it's on their list, but they haven't come to us yet, so.
So I guess really, other than what we've got in existence right now, you're looking at what areas can be developed, whether that is, I guess, south of exit 17.
Correct.
Going that direction. And then everything at exit 19, for all practical purposes, pretty much has been. 14, not sure really how much property lends itself.
Right, again, that would probably be south of that interchange as well, so.
Yes.
So yes, I mean, basically, we're saying that if, for example, you know, this large development here came in and wanted to put up large 50-foot high signs, yes,
Yeah.
they could come in and make that request.
Yeah.
Because that right now is 660 feet on the opposite side that isn't developed.
Okay.
And same, I mean, that would probably be the exit that would most likely have that happen. You know, this could happen here, as well. However, the way that these have developed, you know, there's just not a lot kind of tucked up near the interchange. And then, our town limits ends here, so honestly, again, like you said, this is fairly developed as far as the ones within the 660 feet.
Hmm.
So really, the current 660 feet, these would all be quote-unquote grandfathered that exist. Really, it's this exit that would probably benefit the most from future development. If you made it a larger area, or if instead you just wanted to make it an overlay district, or if you said, hey, you know, that's kind of, those are signs of the past and we really don't want that anymore, you know, that's where there might be some benefit in not having that area be that. But again, it goes back to the discussion of what's business friendly and really what, you know, what should the community
And your
like.
660 goes from where?
Let's see. The 660 that it's not that far, so they only showed me this side of the
Is it
road,
from the
so.
interstate right of way?
It is, yep.
So why is Food City in 17, why is Food City
Hold on, let me see.
compliant, but Taco Bell across the street is not?
This came in because they came in with a master sign plan, essentially, when you all went through the process of
This is
the
what you
meadows.
proposed to the Kroger Shopping Center.
Correct. Yes. So you can see this distance, just looking at that, and I can pull up the GIS here, but it's not, 660 is not a huge distance, honestly, but I can pull up the GIS.
You can put the distance thing on the Google Maps.
Can I hear? I never know where to find that.
Right-click, just right-click, and then measure distance,
Okay, sweet.
and then set something down, and you can pull either end, or
All right.
swing it around, or
There you
whatever
go.
you wanna do, and
We have an engineer amongst us, so.
and hit escape if you want to
Okay.
get rid of it,
You must be
Sweet.
an
I
engineer.
think. Clear measurement, sorry, yeah.
All right.
Is that the Jeep dealership in the lower left corner?
Yes.
Yes.
And that's outside town limits, isn't it?
Yeah, that side of the streets in the county.
I think
and
it is the county,
The graded
yeah.
portions in the town, correct? I think
Yes.
so.
So 660 feet is kind of about right here, so
Yeah.
even that wouldn't, I mean, I'm sure that if there was a development and we said within 660 feet, I mean, you'd go from here and then also measure 660 feet. So basically, all of this could have signage, tall signs along the roadway. So this parcel right here, if it got developed, you know, this parcel here, when the Cook Street extension comes through here and comes across, this way, this parcel would also benefit from being within that distance, so.
Okay, when is that going to happen?
Yeah, what's a realistic timeframe on? Cook
It's
Street?
been funded, so it's within a 6-year, it got funded this last year, so it's within a 6-year boundary from that, so somewhere between now and the next 5 years.
Is that the stone mill or all the way to,
This is only to Stone Mill that got approved.
Okay.
We, the Metropolitan Planning Organization is putting in for the Frenchmore Boulevard extension piece. This part was very expensive, but they've actually figured out some ways where maybe they can, make this bridge shorter. As you all know, this area here is a wetland, so
Yeah.
that's the most complex thing is this, basically from
Just go
Stone
ahead.
Mill, it's just a bridge.
Run a D9 through it. It's
There you
okay.
go.
The Speedway.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of opportunity for really tall signs in what I would consider, you know, undeveloped parcels that do have the potential to become developed.
all right, so
I don't know if there's any, if you all want to discuss it more or give us any guidance or. maybe keep it more confined, okay? We definitely could bring that back as a proposal. And are you thinking that we would keep it then clustered really at the interstate interchanges rather than allowing it to sort of stream
Yes.
across the entire
Yes.
town? Okay,
Yep.
okay.
Now, I don't wanna see it move any closer to town, but I don't see the need to enlarge their sign.
Okay.
But say, and this may not be possible, but say for whatever reason McDonald's has to actually lay their sign down,
Mhm.
then you're not allowed to put
You want them to be able to
another
put
one
the
back
sign?
up. You
Okay.
meet the ordinance, but if they're just gonna change whatever's on top,
Mhm.
given the fact that 25, 30 other businesses have a sign just like it, I don't see that it's fair to force somebody to bring the height down just because they changed the top.
Okay. And that's really where an overlay district can be prescriptive rather than, open-ended, so.
Yeah, just like Scott said earlier, you want to be business friendly, but you don't want to cloud, so to speak, the view, anything of this nature, and have it look like anything but an historical town. I don't think that adds much, and with GPS technology, what have you, you already know where you're going. Yeah, I don't want to say the signs don't add that much, but my guess is they don't bring a lot of business to the facility.
And I think we got there in the same type of conversation, we got to the same agreement with billboards. That we didn't,
Yeah.
ones that are there, but there wasn't an interest from you all to expand and make them electronic or make them bigger, so, I think it's a similar,
Looking at the exit 19 map, could we just say anything south of Old 11 Drive
mhm,
and set that as a boundary
mhm.
instead of X number of feet?
Yeah, and I think that's where if we brought in and basically did an interstate sign overlay, we'd probably capture like these parcels where these signs already exist. Probably the same thing for exit 17, we'd go up, to our, basically to where the new banner pole sign is. And then exit 14, I'm guessing you'd probably want to go to the college and south.
Well, but you have a chance, Kroger area, those being outliers,
Mhm.
if they're gonna update that sign, you're gonna have a chance
To bring it in.
to bring it into ordinance, but if you take it all the way to the banner poles, you're not gonna
Okay.
have a chance to do that.
So you
To a
think
certain extent.
maybe just that Arby's or.
Correct, I mean-
No, you're 100% correct, yeah.
So if you're trying to force the furthest outliers back in,
Mhm.
but you're giving them leeway to do it, I have it if you're not gonna.
Mhm.
Going back to Fiddlers, if they would have had to have laid that sign completely down to do what they wanted to do, sure, I would have been in favor of making them stay within 15 feet.
Okay.
But to use the existing structure,
Mhm.
if Kroger's has to take that whole structure down to the ground, then no, I would be in favor of bringing that back to 15
Okay.
feet. But, if they build right back on the existing structure, is,
So at 17, maybe we would just take it to Cook Street, and then those outliers, if possible, as they change ownership over the next, 25, 30 years, those signs would slowly come into compliance. Okay? Well, we can bring back maps to the next meeting and just look at it and discuss it and see where you all stand. This isn't an ordinance that that we need to rush through, so. Any other comments on this one before I move to the next topic?
I would just say that y'all did a great job putting this
Absolutely.
together. Thank you.
I hope somebody else was driving.
One was
During all the
driving, one was
videos and
videoing.
things.
I was going 65, so I was on the speed, so I just make sure the cash rate, there you go, cash rate. You were paying all the while.
probably get run over at 65.
Yeah, we made sure to go when school was either all the way out and there was a rush, so we made sure to go in optimal times.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about the comprehensive plan?
No, we got two more sign items here. So
Oh,
the next one is
sorry.
a waiver versus a planning commission meeting. So we do have the ability to do waivers. And one of the things that, you know, we have done is that we have brought in, I mean, you all have seen endless signs, correct? I mean, many, many, many signs. Whereas I'm just showing you this multi-business sign one here, that we've all looked at quite a bit. Essentially, any of these signs that, you know, Charlie's and Los Dorados and all of those, as those businesses come and go, if they really only were changing the square footage of these signs and putting different signs on there, there is the ability for us to go through a waiver process, when it's just a like for like square footage, because again, you all aren't allowed to say what can be on the sign. And so we just weren't sure if there was any interest in that being a waiver. So if somebody's replacing the exact same square footage, like if I mean, even talking about a McDonald's, like if they went to a more modern M or something, do you all want to see all of those, or would you, and this again kind of goes back to the business friendly thing, or would you all say, hey, maybe if it's like for like, same square footage, that could be a waiver? And the only reason that we talk about these types of things is that if we see a trend where they're pretty much all approved, that's usually the sign, it's usually an indicator that, you know, we've possibly put together a process that forces people into a more rigorous review of something that could be, again, towards that business-friendly idea, like, hey, they come in, Gabe and Caleb look at them, they meet all the criteria, they're just replacing an existing sign. We're not talking about any of the signs that we've dealt with that have changed, but right now, we basically bring everything to you that's in the entrance corridor, and there is an opportunity for a waiver. So I'll just put that out there. There is no right or wrong answer.
Well, I think for a sign like that, I don't care if I look at it or not. This is kind of odd statement, but that sign is pretty rough. And
Correct, yeah.
and, you know, my dentist sends me an index card that says it's time to get your teeth cleaned. And I asked him, I said, how would you feel if I sent you a card and said it's time to renovate Sandy's kitchen? But
We
a
did
sign
some.
like that, you know, it needs to be upgraded.
We did. We sent them an email. When the Aaron's one came in, we contacted them and said, hey, by the way, this sign is looking really rough. Is there any chance you would like to upgrade it now before the Aaron's goes on there as the largest item, whereas all of these businesses probably have the same weight? And they said, oh, it's on our list, but they just haven't gotten around to it.
It's not
So.
on the list, not on the list.
The only issue with a waiver and coming before the commission is just time.
Correct.
So, I mean,
And that is for businesses, like you heard tonight, you know, coming, and I'm not entirely sure about the whole, you know, whether or not it was put in the mail, but, you know, them coming and saying, hey, we're 2 months behind, and then we're like, okay, well, sorry, you've got to wait a month before you can put your sign up because we can't take it in front of a planning commission. So there's some of that happens in the background that you all don't really see, but, I mean, it's kind of, it's really what your preference is.
Do we, or do y'all encourage the owner to show up? Because I notice most of the time it's just the sign person, and they're like, well, I'm not authorized to make, yeah, because they're not the owner, and the owner's rep is very rare at these things. And it would help a lot to resolve some things, but.
I mean, we do. Just, you know, I think that
Okay.
people pay somebody to take their case over, and then they kind of don't want to
Yeah.
deal with it, so. But yeah, agreed.
Well, I've done a sign on, and the sign company said, you know, a while back I did one, and the sign company said, no, we'll take care of it, you don't have to go to commission, so.
That's probably what they're saying, like,
They-
yeah, it's their money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they may, maybe it's, if y'all notice something askew, then you call sign and say, hey, you might want to have somebody here. I don't know.
Well,
It
we
just seems
do-
to go smoother when,
Yeah, we do require we do require information from the owner, so presumably when the packet, and I'm looking at Jamie because she's brand new, so good information is to always send the packet, not just to the applicant, but making sure that the owner is included. It is oftentimes, again, where the person who's their consultant just is like that, is trying to say, hey, we got it taken care of for
That's,
you.
I was told, do not come to the
Yeah.
meeting, we'll take care of
Right.
it.
Right. And that's more of like a service, like they're trying to provide a
Correct.
service to you, not really, yeah, yeah.
well, if they have to go back to their client and say, oh, we gotta wait another
Right.
30 days, that's pretty bad for
Correct.
business. So. And it doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. Okay.
So is there any desire to have more certificate of appropriateness waivers, or do you like to see all of the signs as they come in? What kind of,
Just personally, again, as long as the time doesn't impose a hardship on the applicant, so to speak, I'm an advocate of having the commission look at them.
okay, yep, I
Now,
hear you.
but
That's one,
guys,
yep.
I'm one.
Yep,
So-
I like to see them personally, but
Okay.
I don't wanna hold up things, so.
no, I mean, this is good, I don't know what the other, we don't have a majority yet, so.
What do you think?
I'm not gonna say anything.
He kinda said he didn't wanna see them, so.
I spoke out about the fenders and now I regret I haven't done it, so I'll just go with the flow here.
I mean, we meet every month, so it's not,
Mhm. Okay.
and they're typically on, when somebody makes a request, are they on that next month, or are they, I mean, I know timing is.
Yeah,
They can't come today and say, "Well,
we're
on
very,
tonight,"
very
but-
lenient, I will tell you that. We
No,
are very,
and-
very lenient with folks. We're not, we, especially with signs, our staff report's pretty much pre-written. It's really just a different sign, every time, so. All right, sounds like you all would like to see them. And then our final thing that we want to talk about is architectural lighting. So, there's two things that have triggered that. The first one is, I don't know if you all have seen this gas station on the edge of town. They basically put this up, came in, got sign permits, but never really talked about light around the outer edge of the building. And so with that, we realized that there's nothing in our ordinance that truly identifies lighting on buildings. And so, the question really is, as you come into your entrance corridor, do you want buildings that, have lights? The second one that you can't quite see in this picture because it's a little bit too light, but it's this tobacco vape shop as well, that's, got so many lights around the windows. And so really what we're getting is, at night, it's a bit, it's distracting to drivers. It's definitely not, it's more of not of the sleepy town that has, shut down. Now we're getting lights coming into the entrance corridor. And so it's really a question, because as the entrance corridor group, it really is up to you all to determine what type of entrance you would like.
What did we talk about previously? And I'll give you an example, Shaked, down here, Potters, where you've got neon.
Right, we have
Right
said
around.
right now for signage that the only signs that can be lit is an open sign. So that's a little bit different. So this would not be in our actual signage ordinance. So we're saying that now, this CDB, this cigar, all of these would never be allowed now, because basically this building triggered us to say, no more. No more lighted signs in windows. The only lighted sign that you can have in a window is an open and close, like hours of operation. However, this lighting, like the lighting all around each of the windows, or the, what we said here, possible language is window lighting is prohibited in either the interior or exterior of windows. Window displays that include products may be illuminated, however, the lights must be concentrated on the products for sale and not directed outward. So I don't want to take away from a shop that wants to put a Christmas display in their window and have some lights in it. However, the lights around every one of the windows, any kind of lights that are protruding out would not be allowed.
So how are, again, otters shaped?
Those were
And
they just happened to be in there before we adopted
Okay.
this ordinance, but we would not allow a new one to come in.
The eyewear
Hmm.
on Main Street right down there. And those are, I'm not picking on those two. It's
No,
just,
yeah.
that's the only
Yeah.
thing my little mind can remember.
Yep, so they wouldn't be allowed now. Basically, this building is what threw us for a loop and why we came to you with the last, where we said no more lighted signs in windows. However, this is now, the lighting inside, in and around the outer edges of windows, the lighting up around the outer edges of buildings, like that's all something new that really we don't have anything in the ordinance to discuss, to regulate it. So it's one thing if you have basically like lights along the bottom of your building that shine up and give sort of a glow light up, but, when you start getting neon, it really is a different look and feel, so.
I think the gas station that was at, in front of the Roses Shopping Center that they took down had this kind of lighting around the edge of it too,
Did it?
didn't it? I'm pretty sure.
I'm not sure.
Of course, that was built in like 2016 maybe.
Yeah, Exxon, wasn't
That was a
No.
Food City, whatever Food City called their gas station. I've got a picture, let's see.
I don't know if this is still, there might be an old picture here. Are you talking about this?
We guess, yeah.
Yeah, I think that thing, I've got a night picture of it on my phone
Do
somewhere.
you? You think this was lit right here?
I think so. I could be wrong, but let's see. It'll take me too long to find it. That thing was probably built, like I said, 2014, 15, 16 range.
Yeah, and I mean, it is just a question, if all of these buildings along here added, a row of light along the top, it's really a question of do we want it or do we not want it?
I guess it's kind of like those pylon signs. If it's in a certain distance that's not downtown, it'd probably be okay.
Yeah, and so that to me is why you all, the entrance corridor, I think we try to have a look and feel that's
Yeah.
cohesive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It did have it,
it lights up all around it, or did.
yeah.
I was thinking it did.
Okay, why did you take that picture?
I'm an artist.
You never know.
That's, okay.
No,
That's-
I walk the dogs at 5 in the morning and the gas station's all lit up at 5 in the morning. I was like, that's a good picture. The street's wet. It looks like no humans around.
Yeah,
It's like
I know, and that's kind of the.
post-apocalyptic thing.
Well, see, and as you're saying, lighted buildings at night and post-apocalyptic at the same time, that is some of the.
But I think if they're not anywhere near the heart of town, just like everything else in town, you get more lenient, I think. We certainly don't want something close to the historic district.
Yeah, it goes back to a question that's been asked for a long, long time. What does the town want to be?
Mhm.
What direction is the town going? How are we marketing the town? Is it a historic town?
Right.
What are the assets and attributes? And what do you want to emphasize? And then kind of go from there.
And I was just gonna show you where your entrance corridor actually is. Let's see, not overlays. So this is the entrance corridor. So it's Cummings. It goes all the way out here on West Main. It comes up on Russell Road. Then you have your historic district, and then it basically stops at Roses. So, this is the area that you would think you'd want to protect the most. So is there
How far does it go, West Main Street?
it goes all the way out to,
Porterfield Highway.
Okay.
yeah. So, the question, I guess, is whether or not I guess it's just if there was a general consensus, or, because we could definitely, write language that would ensure that it goes one direction or another, so.
And I'd like to see Porterfield Highway connect Russell Road and Main Street.
You'd like to have the entrance corridor come through here as well?
Yeah, I sure would.
Okay. And we do have a large project that we're currently in the works on right here at Russell Road and Porterfield Highway, so you all will be seeing quite a few things coming in from that soon to review.
Is that the
So.
property where we approved a convenience mart once before?
And they've actually taken down all those little buildings. There's kind of just trash there right now, but
Yeah.
they're taking all that down as
It
well.
just seems like such a valuable piece of property for just a convenience mart.
KVAD owns that, don't they?
But are they changing that?
There's gonna be a few lots there is the proposal, so we'll have a chance to look at all
The
that.
convenience store approach go through.
No, they're still wanting that as one of the lots, but it's a big property, so, yeah.
Who owns it?
KVAD owns that side where Car City was, and then where Billy DeBusk had all that. Jimmy owned it, Jimmy Stewart owned it for a while and sold it to KVAD.
Okay.
Then you got all that property on the other side of the road.
Jimmy was the one that was proposing the convenience store, isn't he?
Yeah.
Or at the time.
Yeah.
So he doesn't own it now?
No.
No.
Well, the rumor was Kroger's going there, so I guess that's why KVAD bought it.
There you go.
Ding. Ding, 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 ding.
All right, we're in a public meeting, maybe we don't do rumors, so. So, some interest then in maybe controlling what type of architectural lighting?
I think so.
Okay, so we'll bring back some language if you all are interested in that.
How did the, just from my knowledge, entrance corridor go up, taking a good portion of the farm right there?
So this layer is actually just the parcels. So because the parcel touches out here on Russell Road,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, these are just the parcels. The actual definition of the entrance corridor is structures that can be like seen from Cummings. It's more
Okay.
similar to how we do historic preservation, which is if you can see it, you can regulate it. If you can't see it, you can't regulate it. So, yeah, so, although, truth is basically, and I know I'm saying this with no intention of this developing, but if this was to develop, you all, because you can see it from Russell Road, would have the ability to look at it from an entrance
Yes, ma'am.
corridor perspective.
So when did the entrance corridor get established?
That I do not have an answer for you. I don't know that.
Was it this commission that
I don't
determined
think
it?
so. I think it was a while ago.
I'm trying to how do, if that portion of Porterfield were to be included,
Mhm.
how would we go about doing that?
Oh, sure. So it would just be an amendment. So similar to how we would do an amendment if we wanted to add an overlay district for our signs that we're talking about. We would just go in and we'd say, we want to amend the ordinance, and we would add basically this from Russell Road to Main Street. We would add that into the ordinance, and then now it would be part of the entrance corridor. And that would come in front of you all at the planning commission level, and then would have to go to town council as an ordinance amendment.
How do you guys feel about that?
There's a whole lot more cars coming into town that way than there would Russell Road, in my opinion. I think it should be included.
I just wish, and I don't know how you do it, from a GPS standpoint, you could have the trucks go to exit 14, come down Main Street, and then take a left on Porterfield instead of coming through town. And then actually turning up on Russell Road,
It's a source of-
going out Russell Road.
There's already
ordinance is in place for that, but it's not enforced. Our force does not enforce that whatsoever.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of the GPS software that the trucks are using, you know, bring them, you know,
Yeah,
off of 17.
I see them all the time, yeah.
Yeah.
Judging by the traffic that turns left to get on North 81 up to Winterham, I think a large portion of people would drive off the end of the earth if the GPS told them to. I mean, it can't be more clear to get on I-81 north from the sign.
So there's two things we're doing. We're adding a light to the top of that, the no outlet sign, and we are also going to paint on the asphalt.
It's not gonna, there was one that got stuck at 4:30 this morning.
We're gonna
Turn
try, but anyways, did you wanna
I
add
just
something to
briefly
this?
on the-
Yeah.
On the overlay for the rest of the road to come in there, Mike Cochran, Town Manager, 80 Fairway Drive. The overlay to continue that would be outstanding, just because there's a look and feel that you want to establish with the town of Abingdon, and having that gap in there when you don't have that look and feel would be a drawback. And if you travel, I mean, although it has nothing to do with Abingdon, you go to certain places like Boca Raton, and they have more restrictions than you ever wanted to have, but you know you're in Boca when you're there, just the way how it looks and feels. And when you come into Abingdon, you should have a look and a feel, and that is part of our stuff. We had someone who tried to put in a business, other than desirable business recently, and we were, you know, something that you guys have already, that we can't have it anymore. But they decided to put one of their facilities outside the town, but it's got but of course they advertise they're in Abingdon, and they're not. So the nice thing is that if we can establish that look and feel and maintain those standards as things develop, it would be a good thing to have, I would think, just the overlay.
I think you could take it even all the way down to Old Jonesboro Road, honestly, because that's kind of
I agree with that too.
you know, the true entrance into your core part of the commercial.
I mean, I agree with that.
Well, we can bring that back. So it sounds like we'll bring back an overlay district for the signs to talk about. We'll bring back an edit to the overlay district in general, and we'll bring back some language on architectural lighting. Sound good? Okay, and then there's
Sounds
just
good.
one other item. And that is the comprehensive plan. So honestly, a comprehensive plan really only gets reviewed every 5 years, and so this one really is only 4 years old at this time. So we're not really ready to look at the whole comp plan unless somebody wants to. But the VDOT works in all of these 6-year cycles. So just like we talked about Cook Street, you know, it was approved and it's now in a 6-year cycle. So we asked them to look at Main Street in general, basically from Roses to Porterfield, and a couple of the things that they studied and we brought forward to the town council are in these slides that I'm showing you and are in your packet. The main thing that they've asked us to do is in the comprehensive plan, you're supposed to identify your projects, and these specific projects aren't actually identified in there. So we will need to make an amendment to the comp plan just to add these projects. But what I wanted to do is just really briefly go through what each one of them identifies, and just to tell you how we got here. You know, a year and a half ago, we asked, you know, VDOT to study Main Street. Then they went through a process of showing different ideas. We went to different landowners and said, hey, if this is, you know, comes in front of your building or your establishment, what does that look like for you? Then we had that whole set of public meetings that were up at the Coombs Center. And then we met with the town council on individual projects. And then finally, we had an additional public session on the Court Street project. And so this has gone through a multitude of different approvals. So the first one here is a landscape median that starts at Holston Street as you come into the core of the downtown. And like Mr. Cochran indicated, you know, the idea here is that as you're really entering that main street, you start seeing green space, you start slowing down, you start creating a streetscape that has greenery and isn't sort of the large sea of asphalt where you could practically land a plane right now. What we heard, we had this as one giant vegetative buffer, and then when we took it to the public meeting, there was a request to actually split this into two. And so that's what VDOT has designed here in this. And when we say vegetative median, you know, the idea is that you would plant small shrubbery and things that are that grow year-round. It's not where somebody's, you know, out there mowing these strips. So the idea is really to create a vegetative median. The next one here is the area around Russell Road and Wall Street. One of the more radical ideas was to actually come through right near Mike Owen's doctor's office and actually continue Russell Road straight through, because right now, you know, it's that weird awkward angle that you can kind of pass through. We decided not to go after that one. It was a little bit too much for this plan. But you can see here installing pedestrian refuges here so you can get across that sea of asphalt, modifying the signal head to accommodate better crossing at Wall Street, because as you all know, we're going to be having more activity down here on Remsburg with all of the businesses that have been redeveloping in this area.
So no parking in front of the post office.
Correct. That is what they have asked, is that we actually push traffic along and push it on through rather than, because with these
Except on the
two,
other side.
yeah, with these two lights, it creates for pedestrians, it's really confusing where to go, and so that's what they suggested.
There's plenty of parking there anyway.
This is probably the most interesting one. We had a request from the farmer's market to make the crossing area here safer. As you all know, we now have the Abingdon Commons, which is, again, a very active pedestrian area. The Visitor Center and Bonefire, whatever restaurant will come into that space, has a courtyard now in the back for live music. So our goal here with Remsburg Drive is that it becomes as safe as possible for pedestrians. And right now, it's primarily a cut-through. But with more and more activities and more reasons to shut the street down, the idea here is how could we make it safer? So the request is to make this a right out only onto Cummings, to put a hard, they call it a pork chop here, a vegetative area, but make it a hard left off of Cummings, because right now, as people are coming off of Cummings, they kind of just can keep their speed, their high speed, and just cut across the traffic and cut across the two lanes and just zip onto Remsburg Drive. So creating it to where they would actually have to make a left-hand turn. Coming up here towards Main Street, you would have a right turn, a straight through turn, and a left-hand turn. So you wouldn't have this weird, right-hand straight where you kind of merge out and then everybody merges back in on the far side. You would have a dedicated lane that goes straight through the intersection. And then doing pedestrian improvements here, which I think we would all agree that in front of Bonefire, you take your life into your own hands if you step out between those cars. So increasing pedestrian safety there.
Ken, let me know when we can make comments.
Oh, please, go ahead.
Okay, and I understand all of this has already gone through multiple approvals, but, for example, on Abingdon Commons.
Yes.
As it exists currently, you have a number of individuals, either trying to take a left-hand turn, into Abingdon Commons, or coming out of Abingdon Commons, trying to take a left-hand turn and crossing 2 lanes of traffic. One recommendation would be all exiting traffic onto Main Street out of Abingdon Commons be right turn only. If you want to go left, then come down to Remsburg, follow Remsburg around to a lighted intersection.
Okay.
We already have that coming out of, I think, the parking lot. I'm not sure there's a sign there that says right turn only. But I already know of 2 individuals that were almost T-boned because you can't see.
Mm-hmm.
If people coming out of Abington Commons wanting to take a left-hand turn, cross the traffic, and then it's dangerous there.
And also here at the Abington Visitor Center parking lot as well.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And I guess my only observation is you will have tractor trailers come down Main Street, try to take a right onto Cummings.
Mm-hmm.
And we're eating up another lane right there.
Mm-hmm.
That may get interesting at times. Or whatever you have on the sidewalk.
Correct.
Make sure that tractor trailer tires can run over it without doing a lot of damage, because it will happen.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Every streets downtown are just not made for traffic like that. It's,
Right.
it's just not the size and the turning ability to allow tractor and trailers in that area.
Yeah, truthfully, if they were there and they couldn't go and they just kept on going rather than making that turn, that probably would be.
That'd probably be better,
Mhm.
to go all the way back into
Correct.
19.
Yeah.
How do you go about making recommendations? You know, for example, coming out of Abington Commons.
Yeah, we can talk to the owners and indicate that we'd like that. On our side, obviously, we can talk internally and see if we can put a right turn only. It's a little bit tough on this because it was an existing parking lot. You know, if they were coming in as a new business, we could 100% say right turn only. But since
Chances are they'll be back before us.
Chances are, yes. And then you can add that as a condition. Okay, we'll move along here.
Those 3
oh, yep.
spaces going from Main Street up to Valley Street
Mhm.
might be an adventure of people
Mhm.
trying to parallel park and slow traffic going up through there, because it's
Yeah.
a racetrack as it is now up through there.
Yeah,
It's-
one of the things here is to try to get people kind of out of that gutter pan, because right now when you drive across and it's like you kind of dip down and then you pull over. So yeah, the idea here was to stop the merge and, the kind of crisscross that people do to get through the Cummings light. And that's really, like, in all reality, again, we kind of look at it from a, hey, does this make the streetscape better? Does it make things, but they are looking at it from a crash perspective. So the reason they're looking at that is right now they get a lot of, there's side swipes. That's one of our number 1 issues here at this intersection.
Well, you're also, you're adding another lane for queuing.
Mm-hmm, correct,
So you're able to stack more.
correct. These items here are really just honestly to create better pedestrian safety, and if we hear that more than anything, that's probably our number 1 thing that we hear from people. So you've probably seen all the flexible pedestrian crossing signs that we're putting in. But this, again, these are bulb outs. These are just basically creating a much shorter distance for pedestrians to have to cross Main Street. And in so doing, you actually do create slower traffic, because as people come to each one of these, they certainly don't see a wide open sea of asphalt. They actually have to slow down. So that's the idea between all of that. And again, this area is one of the number 1 most dangerous places for side swipes in our
And on Church Street, coming down.
Yes. This is where you were thinking of one-way here?
Well, 2 things. One, I
Okay.
applaud the town and VDOT for doing away with that turn lane.
Yeah.
That it really is a traffic hazard. We had a wreck, actually a little over a week ago. A gentleman came down, took out the fire hydrant in front of the house, and then hit a tree in between myself and Goodman Jewelers. But somebody's gonna get hurt right there. But doing away with that, then you add the parking for barter or what have you. Church Street on the opposite side, on the Methodist Church side, is one way right now. I think Church Street coming up by the house ought to be one way. You transition to a 1-lane road anyway at the top of the hill.
Mm-hmm.
And if you come out by the house right now and try to take a left, for any cars that are parked right there, it's gonna block your view.
Yeah.
So your line of sight it's actually gonna be more dangerous than what it is to go on around to Pecan and then hit the light.
Yeah, that turn lane, basically, in most people's observation is that people just ride halfway in the turn lane and halfway in the regular lane, because.
If they,
Right,
if they make a move at all.
correct.
Um,
So, it has not been a good, that turn lane has not been a good addition.
No.
So, yeah, so we'll take the one-way, as part of the comments.
College Street, right turn only.
Yeah, I like that idea too. Most of us, I think, like I said, most of us do come there to do a right, and then we go to Pecan to make a left, because it is just torturous to try to make a left out of here. Agreed. And then this one was the one that has caused probably the most amount of anxiety. VDOT proposed a very odd thing. They proposed a half-block one-way, which would mean that in order to leave this entrance here open for courthouse parking, this second half on the northern end would have been two-way. However, we said to them, that's just an impossible traffic maneuvering nightmare, to think that people would turn up here but then not come up here, since we already get people going the wrong way on College and Church. And so we asked them to go back to the drawing board, and this is what they've created to have a one-way for this section of Court. We invited all the adjoining business owners. We looked at crash data that happens here, where people used to be able to come up here and make a right-hand turn or left-hand turn, and there was a lot of traffic issues here and, crashes. Comparatively, I say a lot, we've only got a few ever in town in general, but, so the general consensus is this creates a safer roadway by creating it one way. Had the business owners come out and said, no, we're not interested in one way, we think it'll somehow be detrimental to business, then this probably, the easiest thing for staff would have just been remove the barricades and peel up the tape, but we really wanted to do a thorough investigation of how has it gone since it's been a one-way. And people generally seem to want to keep it that way. So that's where the decision was made to also put this project in place. However, a portion of this project we may have to at least take on as the town, because as I said, this goes into a 6-year pot of money, and the courthouse is gonna be done before those 6 years are over. So there may be us having to do some of this work internally.
Has the town done a parking study as to whether or not there's a deficit or surplus?
We
of
did.
spaces?
There's an original parking study that actually Mr. Wilson's group had done, and then we did a follow-up study with students this last year and found that there was parking available, and that we keep saying it sort of jokingly, but we seem to have more of a walking problem than a parking problem.
There's
So-
basically plenty of parking, but people don't want to walk. And the other thing is most business owners park right in front of their business. Yet they complain that customers can't park.
Well, it only hurts themselves.
Yes.
So I was
Correct.
kinda hoping there was a shortage.
Unfortunately, no.
Church parking lot.
But if you wanted the church
Release
parking
that.
lot to, we've been saying that in a lot of places, like where Gabe's from Charleston, every church everywhere has paid parking in their parking lot, so, that's another thing. When we added that parking in to the parking that existed downtown, we said there's tons of parking. Some people could just make some revenue off of the parking that already exists.
People park at our bank all day
Mhm.
long, get the courthouse.
Well, there you go, another person that can make revenue. So everybody should just go ahead and get the kiosks and put the
Well, that's
QR
easier-
codes and.
That's easier for the bank. Once you enter into the church, it's like, well, what's the Christian thing to do? You know, okay, well, we have to repave that.
There you go. Somebody could have helped you pay for it, so, yeah. And then the final one is on the other end of town, and this is in front of the movie theater, and, again, everybody was in agreeance that that's sort of the true entrance into town, and again, putting those vegetative medians instead of having the wide, sea of asphalt. This also is helpful, it's because it's a confusing intersection here when people go to turn into the, you know, the Wolf Hill Shopping Center to CVS. This would just actually force people to go to the light and turn in appropriately.
It'd be nicer if they didn't have the left turn into VDOT and moved it down to the very end of VDOT, so we have a continuous thing.
It would be,
That's
they
just
kind of
me.
requested that, and they were doing the design.
They don't need two entrances, I don't think.
Going back to the one on Court Street.
Sure.
It seems to me that there's a lot of striped lines there that would make nice landscape areas.
Correct, we've talked about that too, that we could actually turn these areas either into green space, or we even have talked about the really big giant planters that you see in other communities. That would really make Court Street again like a walkable destination street. And that, I think, Court Street and then Remsburg are our two, I like to say, like, they're our entertainment streets. So you've got this Courthouse Hill, and then you've got Remsburg, and they're the two ends of the town where we do most of our entertaining of our guests. So that's all we really have. We need to add these projects into the comp plan, but again, if there was anything else where you all said, hey, there's other sections of the comp plan that we'd like to look at ahead of time, we could do that, or we can just do this one amendment and probably look at the comp plan in the next 2 years. You have a smile on your face, so I'm not sure if that means you have a topic or,
I'm good.
okay. So, that's all. I know it was a lot, but.
All right, any announcements? No? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Also move we adjourn.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Adjourn.